The measure of a man is not what he does when the world watches, but what he holds back when no one would blame him. A cop shoves a man against a wall outside a corner store in Harlem. The baton cracks across his back. On the ground, animal. The officer swings again. This time the man catches the baton mid-swing. One hand stops it dead. The cop's eyes go wide, because the man holding his weapon is Mike Tyson, the most dangerous fighter on the planet. Every window on the block has a camera pointed down. Tyson rips the baton free. He could end this in 1 second. Everyone knows it. Instead, he drops the weapon at the officer's feet and walks away. But that footage will destroy everything the officer built. What happens when the most feared man alive chooses mercy? If you're new here, subscribe for more. Now, let me take you back to the beginning of that day. Because what happened outside that corner store did not come out of nowhere. And the man who swung that baton had been swinging it for years. Harlem, 1995. A Tuesday morning in late September. Mike Tyson had been out of prison for 5 months. 5 months of trying to figure out how to walk down a street without the whole world deciding who he was before he opened his mouth. He was staying with an old friend named Curtis on 127th Street. Small apartment, 2 bedrooms, nothing fancy. Curtis had known Tyson since before the fame, before the belt, before the fall. And Curtis was one of the only people who never asked Tyson for a single thing. That morning, Tyson walked 4 blocks to a corner store to buy orange juice and a newspaper. That is it. No entourage, no bodyguard. Just a man in a gray hoodie trying to have a quiet morning. Now here is the thing. That corner store sat right in the middle of Officer Dane Garrett's patrol zone. And if you lived in that part of Harlem in 1995, you knew exactly who Dane Garrett was. He had been on the force for 11 years. Tall, broad, blonde crew cut. And he ran those blocks like they belonged to him. Every shop owner knew his face. Every kid on the stoop knew to look down when his cruiser rolled past. He did not write tickets. He did not give warnings. He gave lessons. That was his word. Time for a lesson. And the lessons always came with his hands or his baton. Believe me, the neighborhood had tried. Complaints had been filed. 17 of them, all from black men, all describing the same pattern. A stop for no reason. An escalation out of nothing. Then force. Real force. Broken wrists. Cracked ribs. One man lost vision in his left eye after Garrett pressed his face into the curb. But every single complaint disappeared, filed and forgotten, because Garrett's precinct captain, a man named Harold Briggs, made sure of it. Briggs and Garrett went back 15 years. Same academy class, same unit in their early days. And Briggs had made it clear to everyone in the building. You do not touch Garrett. You do not question Garrett. So for 11 years, Garrett operated with no leash. And the people of that neighborhood lived under a man with a badge who believed the badge made him untouchable. That is the world Tyson walked into when he stepped out of that corner store with a small paper bag in his hand. He did not know Garrett. He had never seen him before. But Garrett knew exactly who he was. And see, that is what made this different. Garrett did not stop Tyson because he looked suspicious. He stopped him because he recognized him. Because stopping Mike Tyson, putting Mike Tyson on the ground, that was not just a lesson. That was a trophy. Garrett pulled his cruiser to the curb so fast the tires barked. He was out of the car before the engine settled. And he was already reaching for the baton before his boots hit the sidewalk. Tyson saw him coming. And for a split second, he thought about turning around and going back inside the store. But he did not. He just stood there, holding his bag, waiting to see what this man wanted. That hesitation, that one calm second of standing still. It was about to cost both of them everything. Garrett closed the distance in 4 steps. He did not say good morning. He did not ask for identification. He grabbed Tyson by the back of the hoodie and drove him face first into the brick wall beside the store entrance. The paper bag hit the ground. The orange juice bottle cracked open and rolled into the gutter. Hands on the wall. Now. Tyson put his hands on the wall. He did not speak. He did not resist. He had been through enough in his life to know what a moment like this was. A man with power and no control. You do not fight that with fists. You survive it. But Garrett was not interested in a calm stop. He needed a reaction. He needed the trophy. "What are you doing in my neighborhood?" Garrett said. And then the slurs started. One after another. Loud enough for the whole block to hear. Words I will not repeat because they do not deserve repeating. But the people standing on that sidewalk heard every single one. And they froze. Because they had heard those words from that mouth before. Many times. Now get this. An old woman on the third floor of the building across the street. Her name was Dorothy Mays. 71 years old. She had lived on that block for 40 years. And she had watched Garrett do this to men in her neighborhood more times than she could count. That morning, she did something she had never done before. She picked up her camcorder. The one her grandson had given her for Christmas. And she pressed record. She was not the only one. A teenager 2 windows down grabbed his handheld camera. A man on the fire escape across the alley held up his. 3 cameras. 3 angles. All rolling before Garrett even pulled the baton from his belt. And then he pulled it. The first strike hit Tyson across the upper back. Hard. The sound was sharp. Like a board snapping. Tyson's knees buckled, but he did not go down. Garrett screamed, "On the ground, animal!" and swung again. This is where it turns. Tyson's left hand came up. Fast. Faster than anything Garrett had ever seen in his life. He caught the baton in midair. One hand. Full grip. The baton stopped like it had hit concrete. Garrett tried to pull it back. He could not move it. Not an inch. Tyson turned around slowly. He looked Garrett dead in the eyes. And the look on Garrett's face. Believe me, it was the face of a man who just realized he had walked into the wrong room. Because standing in front of him was not a suspect. Not a victim. It was Mike Tyson, the former heavyweight champion of the world. A man who had knocked out grown men in 4 seconds. And Garrett had just hit him. Twice. Tyson ripped the baton out of Garrett's hand with one pull. The force sent Garrett stumbling backward. His back hit the side of his own cruiser and he nearly fell. The baton sat in Tyson's hand like it weighed nothing. The whole block held its breath. Tyson looked at the baton. He turned it over once. Then he bent down, placed it gently on the pavement at Garrett's feet, and said 7 words. "I could end you in 1 second. He paused. "But I want you to end yourself." Then he turned around. And he walked away. No shouting. No fists. No chase. Just a man in a gray hoodie walking back the way he came. And for about 10 minutes nothing happened. The block was quiet. Garrett stood beside his cruiser, breathing hard, staring at the baton on the ground. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Felt like the whole thing might just disappear. Like the neighborhood would swallow it the way it had swallowed everything else Garrett had done. Felt like it was over. It was not. Because 45 minutes later, Dorothy Mays did something that changed the entire nature of what had happened on that sidewalk. She did not call the police. She did not call a lawyer. She called her grandson. And her grandson called a reporter at a local news station. And by noon, that camcorder tape was sitting on a news desk in Midtown Manhattan. Now, this is where the story stops being about a confrontation and starts being about a system. See, when Garrett got back to the precinct that morning, he filed a report. And in that report, he wrote that he had conducted a routine stop. That the subject had been hostile. That the subject had assaulted an officer and stolen his weapon. He wrote that he feared for his life. He recommended charges. He lied. Every single word of it. And Captain Harold Briggs read that report, signed it, and sent it up the chain. Just like he had done 17 times before. Because that is how the machine worked. Garrett swung. Briggs buried. And the neighborhood paid. But this time there was tape. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, the news station aired a 60-second clip. Dorothy's footage. Shaky but clear. You could hear the slurs. You could see the first strike. You could see Tyson catch the baton. And you could see him walk away without throwing a single punch. By 6 o'clock, every major network in the country had picked it up. By 9 o'clock, it was the lead story on national news. And by midnight, Garrett's name was in every living room in America. Now here is where it gets worse for Garrett. Because the tape did not just show what he did. It proved that his official report was a lie. Every word of it. He wrote that Tyson attacked him. The tape showed the opposite. He wrote that Tyson stole his weapon. The tape showed Tyson dropping it at his feet. He wrote that he feared for his life. The tape showed a man walking away in a gray hoodie. The lie was the thing that broke the door open. Not just for Garrett. For Briggs. For the whole precinct. Because once the press had the tape, they started asking questions. And the first question they asked was simple. Has this officer had complaints before? And someone inside that precinct. To this day, nobody knows who. Someone leaked the files. All 17 complaints. Names, dates, injuries, medical records. All of it dumped to the press in a single envelope. And suddenly, this was not about one stop on a Tuesday morning. This was about 11 years. 11 years of violence. 11 years of silence. 11 years of a captain protecting a man who should have been removed from the force before most of those complaints were ever filed. Garrett made one more mistake that night. A big one. He went on a local radio show. Without a lawyer. Without permission from the department. And when the host asked him about the tape, Garrett said, "That man is a convicted criminal. I was doing my job. And I would do it again tomorrow." That clip aired everywhere within the hour. And that was the moment Garrett stopped being a local problem. He became a national one. Civil rights attorneys from 3 different organizations began making calls. The mayor's office issued a statement before sunrise. And Mike Tyson, the man the whole world had already decided was a monster, had not said a single public word. He did not need to. The tape said everything. Within 48 hours, the dominoes started falling. And they fell fast. The first to go was Garrett himself. The department suspended him within 24 hours of the tape airing. Not because they wanted to, because the mayor forced their hand. The press had already connected the 17 complaints to Garrett. They had names. They had photos of injuries. One reporter tracked down the man who lost vision in his left eye. His name was James Boone, a 44-year-old bus driver who had been stopped by Garrett for a broken taillight 3 years earlier. Boone went on camera and described what happened to him in a voice so steady and so calm it made the anchor go silent. He said, "I filed a complaint the next day. I never heard back. Not once." That interview broke something open, because after it aired, 4 more of the 17 men came forward. Then 6, then 9, each one telling the same story. A stop for nothing. An escalation for no reason. Then the baton. Then the silence. Now get this. The district attorney's office opened a formal investigation. Not just into Garrett. Into Captain Harold Briggs. Because the question was no longer whether Garrett had committed assault. The question was who let him do it for 11 years. And the answer had a name and a rank. Briggs tried to get out in front of it. He held a press conference on a Thursday afternoon. He stood behind a podium and said he had no knowledge of any pattern of complaints. He said his office handled all filings according to department protocol. He said he was confident the investigation would show proper procedure was followed. He lasted 9 minutes, because a reporter in the second row held up a photocopy of one of the buried complaint files. And stamped at the bottom, in blue ink, was Briggs's own signature. Right next to the word dismissed. Briggs walked off the stage without finishing. He resigned the next morning. Garrett was indicted 2 weeks later. The charges were assault under color of law, filing a false report, civil rights violations, and misconduct. The trial lasted 11 days. The jury watched the tape 4 times. They heard from James Boone, from Dorothy Mays, from the teenager who filmed from 2 floors up, and from 3 other men whose complaints had been buried by Briggs. Garrett's lawyer tried to argue that Tyson was a known violent offender and that the officer had reasonable fear. The prosecutor played the tape one more time. In it, you could see Tyson place the baton on the ground, gently, like he was returning a borrowed pen, and then walk away. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty. On all counts. Garrett was sentenced to 6 years. He lost his badge. He lost his pension. He lost the one thing he had built his entire identity around. The power to walk through that neighborhood like he owned it. That was gone. And Tyson still had not given a single interview. Not one press conference. Not one statement through a lawyer. The man the world called a monster had done the most disciplined thing anyone on that block had ever seen. He had the power to destroy Garrett in 1 second. Everyone knew it, and he put the weapon down. That silence was louder than any punch he ever threw. It took almost a year before Tyson finally spoke about it. He did one interview. Just one. A quiet sit-down with a journalist who had covered boxing for 20 years. No cameras at first. Just a conversation. Tyson agreed to let them film after the first 10 minutes, once he felt comfortable. The journalist asked him what went through his mind when Garrett swung the baton the second time. Tyson sat still for a long moment. Then he said, "I have been hit by the best fighters on the planet. That baton did not hurt me. What hurt me was knowing that he had done that to men who could not stop it. Men who went home with broken bones and nobody to call. That is what I was thinking about when I caught it." The journalist asked why he did not fight back. Tyson leaned forward and said something that ended up being quoted in newspapers for months afterward. He said, "Hitting him would have felt good for 5 seconds. Watching him lose his badge, his pension, and his freedom, that felt good forever." That line traveled. It went further than any highlight reel, further than any knockout, because it came from a man the whole world had already written off. A man they had called an animal. A man they had put in a cage and expected to stay wild. And instead, he stood on a sidewalk in Harlem and made a choice that most people would never have the discipline to make. Now, let me tell you what happened after. Dorothy Mays became something of a local hero. She never wanted attention. She told reporters she was just a woman who was tired of watching from her window and doing nothing. The city gave her a community service award the following spring. She accepted it wearing the same housecoat she wore the morning she picked up that camcorder. She passed away 2 years later. Quietly, in her sleep, the neighborhood named a bench after her on the block where it all happened. A small brass plate. It read, "Dorothy Mays." She pressed record. James Boone, the bus driver who lost his eye, received a settlement from the city. It was not a large amount, but it was an acknowledgement. For the first time in 3 years, someone had looked him in the face and said, "This happened to you and it was wrong." He told a reporter that mattered more than the money. The precinct went through a full restructuring. A civilian oversight board was created. New complaint procedures were put in place. Officers who had served under Briggs were reassigned or reviewed. It was not perfect. These things never are. But the silence that had protected Garrett for over a decade was broken. And once silence breaks, it does not go back together easily. As for Tyson, he never led a march. He never gave a speech at a rally. He never started a foundation or put his name on a campaign. People asked him to. Many times. He said no. He said, "I am not a leader. I am just a man who got tired of being what everybody expected." But here is what I think about when I think about that morning. I think about that baton sitting on the pavement. I think about a man who could have done the worst thing imaginable and chose to do nothing instead. Not because he was weak, because he had already been the other version of himself. And he knew where that road ended. The measure of a man is not what he does when the world watches. It is what he holds back when no one would blame him. Tyson held back. And that is why we are still telling this story.